Welcome back to our exploration of the Epistles of the Ikhwan al-Safa. We're exploring the first epistle today on arithmetic, so we'll get started now. Introduction to the Ikhwan al-Safa. The Ikhwan al-Safa not only recognized the pedagogic, didactic, and epistemic merits of the mathematical sciences, but actually celebrated the symbolic order of their mystical significance and ontological bearings, reflecting the influence of Neo-Pythagorean leitmotifs in their teachings, as mediated by Neoplatonist interpretations, following the broader practice of their age, and in line also with antique quadrivium tradition. The Epistles of the Brethren of Purity, proto-encyclopedia, begins with two treatises on pure mathematics, the first dealing with arithmetic. In their epistles on arithmetic, the Ikhwan present technical and epistemic analysis of mathematical concepts and their metaphysical underpinnings. They investigate in these tracts the properties of numbers and of geometric magnitudes, based primarily on the traditions of Nicomachus of Gerasa and of Euclid, with the Pythagorean construal of the ultimate principles of mathematics within the symbolic order of mysticism, and inspired by their own ontological outlook on the articles of faith in Islam. The Ikhwan viewed arithmetic and geometry through a monotheistic spiritual lens. Legacies in the mathematics were established in the 9th and 10th centuries, and they had great impacts on the emergence and unfolding of later scientific and mathematical disciplines not only in the Islamic lands, but much beyond them as well, into the Middle Ages and Renaissance in Europe. A lot of the work done by Muslim scholars at this time remained unmatched and unpassed until certain works of polymaths such as René Descartes, Leibniz, and Fermat and Cavalieri. Most notable contributions in the mathematical sciences in the 9th and 10th centuries in Islamic civilizations came from those who may be referred to as the School of Baghdad, which embodied the Archimedean Apollonian legacy in mathematics, namely attributed to the investigation and reinterpretation of the models and treatises of Archimedes of Syracuse and Apollonius of Perga. The cross-generational school was represented in 9th century by mathematicians such as the famed Banu Musa, by the celebrated Sabian scholar Thabit ibn Qurra, and his reputed grandson Ibrahim ibn Sinan. In the 10th century, this tradition continued with mathematicians like Abu Jafar al-Khazin, Abu Sal Wajin ibn Rustam al-Kuhi, and Abu al-Ala ibn Sal. This legacy ultimately culminated in the 11th century with the geometrical and optical research of Ibn Haytham, also known as Al-Hazan, in his systemization of a newly emergent field of infinitesimal mathematics, which determined the prehistory of the early modern infinitesimal calculus. These polymath worked in research teams across several generations instead of being active as isolated individuals. Their treatises and findings were handed down within the continual and progressive mathematical traditions for more than 3 centuries. One should also not forget to mention the associated traditions of the algebraists, who built their work on early 9th century legacy of Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. It must also be noted that there is no clear evidence that the Ikhwan were fully aware of the detailed aspects of the work of the algebraists, or that they were themselves seriously interested in elaborating on the science of algebra. Math does continue to evolve in this time, and we see eventually the antique quadrivium model be challenged by the works of scholars such as Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina. With that being said, let us now get into the epistle itself, go chapter by chapter. Now, there's a lot of redundant information for us in the year of 2026 because a lot of the math for them was cutting edge and brand new. Hence, they are explaining it in great detail for people that may have never been engaging with arithmetic of this standard. But for most people like you and I, this is middle school stuff. So I will only be covering certain epistles in depth with have more interesting ideas within them. Epistle 1 on arithmetic. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Chapter 1. Know, O righteous and compassionate brother, may God aid us and you with a spirit from him, that this is the method of our noble brethren. May they be aided by God, to study all the sciences of existent beings that are in this world, be they substances, accidents, abstracts, entities, simple or compound, and to inquire into their principles and the quantity of their species, kinds, properties, and into their arrangement in order as they are present, as well as into the process of their originating and growing out of one cause and of one origin, by one Creator. May His loftiness be exalted. They rely in demonstrating these things on numerical analogies and geometric proofs, similar to what the Pythagoreans used to do. Therefore, we had to situate this present epistle before all our other tracts, and to mention it in significant things that belong to the science of number and its properties, which is called arithmetic. We did so in terms of a preface or an introduction in order that the pathway might become easier for students to acquire the wisdom that is called philosophy, and that such acquisition may become simpler for novices in the study of the propedeutic sciences. So we say that at the beginning of philosophy is the love of the sciences, the middle of it is the knowledge of the true nature of existent beings by virtue of human ability, and its end is speech and action that is in accord with knowledge. Chapter 2. The philosophical sciences are of four kinds, the first being propedeutic sciences, the second logical, third natural, and the fourth are theological sciences. Propedeutic sciences are of four kinds. The first is arithmetic, second geometry, third is astronomy, and the fourth is music. Music is a knowledge of the composition of sounds and the principles of melodies that are derived from it. Astronomy is a science of the stars by means of proofs that are recorded in the book of Ptolemy's Almagest. Geometry is the science of mensuration by means of proofs that are recorded in the book of Euclid. Arithmetic is the study of properties of numbers and the qualities of the existence that conform to them, following what Pythagoras and Nicomachus recorded in this regard. Expressions point to certain meanings that are the objects of names, and the expressions are the names. The most general expression or name is a saying thing, and a thing may be one or more than one. The one is said in two ways, in its proper usage and by way of metaphor. In its proper usage, it is a thing that cannot be partitioned or divided, and everything that cannot be divided is one, when looked upon from the aspect by which it cannot be divided. If you wish, you may say one is that in which there is nothing else but itself, insofar as it is one. As for one in metaphor, it is every aggregate that is considered a unity. So, for example, 10 is called a unit, and 100 is called a unit, and 1,000 is called a unit. One is the epitome of oneness, like black is the epitome of blackness, and oneness is the attribute of being one, as blackness is the quality of being black. Chapter 3. Plurality is an aggregate of ones, and the first of the plural numbers is 2, 3, then 4, 5, and so on into infinity. Plurality is of two kinds, is that the number is the quantity of the form of things in the mind of the counter, while the numbered are things themselves. As for reckoning, it is the putting of numbers together and their separation. Numbers are of two kinds, whole numbers, positive, and fractions. 1, which precedes 2, is the source and principle of all numbers, and from it all numbers are generated, both whole and fractional, and they may be reduced to it again. The whole numbers are generated by augmentation, and the fractional numbers by division. An example of this is what I stated regarding the generation of whole numbers. When another one is adjoined to one, it is said that they are two, and so on and so forth, into infinity. Numbers are reduced to 1 as follows. If 1 is taken from 10, then 9 remains, so on and so forth, back down to 1. Chapter 4. Fractional numbers are generated from 1 as follows. The whole numbers are put in their natural order, 1 through 9 and 10. The 1 is pointed out from every aggregate. It is then clear how fractions are obtained from 1. If 1 is pointed out from an aggregate of 2, it is called a half. If 1 is pointed out from an aggregate of 3, then it is called a third, so on and so forth. Know, O brother, that the whole numbers are arranged in 4 ranks, units, tens, hundreds, and thousands. The units are the numbers from 1 to 9, tens from 10 to 90, hundreds from 100 to 900, and thousands from 1,000 to 9,000. Chapter 5. Know, O brother, may God aid you and us with the Spirit from Him, that the existence of numbers in the 4 ranks of units, 10, hundreds, and thousands is not a matter that necessarily follows from the nature of numbers, as is the case with the existence of even and odd numbers, whole and fractional numbers, which follow one another, but rather it is a conventional matter that the philosophers have laid down by their own will. They did this so that numbers would conform to the arrangement of natural things, for most natural things were established by the Creator, exalted be his praise, in fourfold orders. For example, there are 4 natures, as heat, cold, dampness, and dryness, 4 elements, as fire, air, water, and earth, and 4 humors, as blood, phlegm, and the 2 biles, yellow bile, black bile, and 4 seasons of spring, summer, autumn, and winter, and the 4 winds of the east, the west, the south, and the north, and the 4 orientations of upward, downward, right, and left, and the 4 cardins, the ascendant, the descendant, the medium coli, and the enum coli, and 4 sublunar beings of metals, plants, animals, and humans. Consequently, one finds that most natural things comes as fourfolds. Chapter 6. Know, O brother, that these natural things come in force by the graceful intention of the Creator, exalted is his name, and by the exegesis of his wisdom. The categories of natural things thus conform to the spiritual things that are above natural beings and are incorporeal. For things that are beyond the natural entities are also set in 4 ranks. The first of them is the Creator, exalted be his praise. Then under him the active universal intellect, and under it the universal cosmic soul, and under it prime matter, and all these are not corporeal. Know, O brother, may God aid you and us with the Spirit from him, that the relation of the Creator, exalted be his praise, to all existent beings is like the relationship of the unit 1 to the other numbers, and the relationship of the universal intellect to its existence is like the relation of the number 2, and the relation of the universal soul is like the relation of number 3, and the relation of prime matter is like the relation of number 4. Know, O brother, may God aid you and us with the Spirit from him, that every number has its units, its tens, its hundreds, and its thousands, or what exceeds them, into infinity. The origin of all of them is a set of numbers from 1 to 4. The remaining numbers are composed and generated from them, since they are the source of all numbers. You see this when you add 1 to 4, the total is 5. When you add 2 to 4, the total is 6. When you add 3 to 4, the total is 7. When you add 1 to 3 to 4, the total is 8. And when you add 2 and 3 to 4, the total is 9. And when you add 1 and 2 and 3 to 4, the total is 10. This is the rule for the rest of the numbers, the tens, the hundreds, the thousands, and what exceeds them. Similarly, the elements of writing are 4, and the rest of the letters are compounded from them, since words are composed from the letters, as we shall explain later. Chapter 8. Know, O brother, may God aid you and us with the Spirit from him, that the first thing which the Creator, exalted is his name, invented and innovated from the light of his unity was a simple substance called active intellect, as he made 2 arise from 1, by repetition. Then he made the universal soul arise from the light of the universal intellect, as he made 3 from the adding of 1 to 2. Then he fashioned prime matter from the movement of the universal soul, as he generated 4 by adding 1 to 3. He then made the rest of the created beings from prime matter, and he arranged it by the intermediary of the universal intellect and the soul, as he made the rest of the numbers from 4 by adjoining to it what precedes it, as we noted in the example above. Chapter 9. Know, O brother, may God aid you and us with the Spirit from him, that when you reflect upon what we have said regarding the composition and generation of numbers from 1 that is prior to the number 2, you will find it the clearest proof of the uniqueness of the Creator, exalted be his praise, and of the process of his creation and invention of things. For although the existence of numbers and their compositions can be conceived from the one, as we explained earlier, nothing essential to it has changed, and it is indivisible. Similarly, although God, exalted in his loftiness, is one who created all things from the light of his unity, and generated them, and made them their beginning, and made them grow, and have their existence, duration, completeness, and perfection through him, and nothing essential to him has changed in his unity prior to this act of creation. As we will explain in the Epistle on the Intellective Principles, we already informed you that the relation of the Creator, exalted is his name, to all existence is analogous to the relation of the number 1 to the numbers. God, exalted is his name, is the cause of all things and their creator, their beginning and their end. God cannot be compared or likened to anything in his creation, and the one which accounts for the generation of all numbers cannot be divided, nor can it be compared to any other number. God knows all things and their essences. Hence, God is exalted in grandeur and magnificent over what the unjust say.
In younger grades, such as middle school and high school, but for them it was a revolutionary field. It was something brand new that they were explaining for people that may never have been exposed to any kind of mathematics prior. To kind of save some time, I'll basically give you the main idea of what they're saying, and if there's anything really interesting, we'll take a pause and look at it before we get to the actual interesting bits that come a little bit later. Chapter 10. Know, O brother, that the ordered ranks of numbers are 4, according to most people, as we mentioned, but the Pythagoreans placed them in 16 ranks, from ones to quadrillions. Now also know that every whole number has 1 to 2 parts or several parts. For example, 12 has a half, a third, a fourth, and a sixth, and a 12th. Chapter 11, on the properties of numbers. Know, O brother, that every number has one or more special properties, meaning the particular qualities of a described object that nothing else other than itself shares with it. The special property of the unit 1 is that it is the source of all numbers, as we explained before. Property of the number 2 is that it is absolutely the first whole number, and it is the even number generator. And the number 3 is the first odd number, and it also generates a third of the numbers. A special property of the number 4 is that it's the first perfect square. Property of the number 5 is that it is the first circular number. What they mean by that is if you multiply 5 times any number, at the end of that number will always be the number 5, and after 25, at the end of that number will always be the number 25 if you multiply those numbers by itself. So it circulates over and over again. The special property of the number 6 is that it is the first perfect number. Property of number 7 is that it's the first complete number. Number 8 is that it's the first perfect cube. 9 is that it's the first odd perfect number. And it is the last rank of the units. The first property of 10 is that it's the first rank of the 10 units. A special property of 11 is that it's the first def number. Property of the number 12 is that it's the first abundant number. In the next chapter, they go on to explain what they mean by these properties. So for example, 1 is of the origin. The unit 1 has only one adjacent number, which is 2, and 1 is half of it, and it is twice 1. We say that 1 is a source and generator of the numbers because when 1 is removed from existence, all the numbers are removed with it. But when the numbers are removed from existence, 1 is not removed. We say that 2 is a first whole number because numbers are a plurality of 1, and the first plurality is 2. We say 3 is the first odd because 2 is the first number, and it is even, and 3 being adjacent to it is odd. We say that it generates a third of the numbers, some odd, some even. We say 4 is the first perfect square, and this is the case because it's the product of the number 2 multiplied by itself. We say that 5 is the first circular number because it returns to itself. We say that 6 is similar to 5, but it's not self-abiding, as 5 is. 6 times 6 is 36. 6 returns to itself, and 30 appears. When 36 is multiplied by itself, the product is 1,296. 6 appears, but not 30. It was said that a special property of the number 6 is that it is the first perfect number. Namely, if the divisors of a number add up to itself, it is called a perfect number, and 6 is the first of them. 6 has a half, which is 3, a third, which is 2, and a sixth, which is 1. If these 3 dividers are added up, the sum is equal to 6. It is said that 7 is the first complete number because 7 combines in itself the meaning of all the preceding numbers, for the numbers are even or odd. 2 is the first even number, and 4 is the second. Odd numbers have a first and a second, 3 is the first, and 5 is the second. If first odd number is added to the second even number, or the first even number is added to the second odd number, the sum is 7. This is a special property of 7 which no other number before it possesses, and it has other special properties which we will discuss when we consider the fact that existent beings are constituted in accordance with the nature of numbers. They go on to explain further how different numbers have different properties, but the first 7 are the most interesting. Everything else is more based in math. Chapter 12. Know, brother, that God may aid you and us with the Spirit from him. The numbers are divided into 2 divisions, whole and fractions. In this chapter, they explain how fractions work and how multiplication works and division. Chapter 13. Know, O brother, may God aid you and us with the Spirit from him, that every odd number has a special property, that is, if it is divided into 2 parts in any way, one of the parts will be even and the other will be odd. And every number has a special property that if it is divided in a way, the parts will either be both odd or both even. It goes through the even and odds number table. Chapter 14, on perfect, deficient, and abundant numbers. They pretty much explain that a perfect number is any number whose divisors add up to itself. An abundant number is any number whose divisors add up to more than itself. And a deficient number is any numbers whose divisors add up to less than itself. Chapter 15, on amicable numbers. Know, O brother, may God aid you and us with the Spirit from him, that from another point of view, the numbers may be divided into 2 subdivisions. One of them is called amicable. This designates any 2 numbers, one abundant and one deficient, such that the sum of the divisors of the abundant number is equal to the deficient number, and the sum of the divisors of the deficient number is equal to the abundant number. For example, consider 220, which is an abundant number, and 284, which is a deficient number. The sum of the divisors of 220 is equal to 284, and the sum of the divisors of the latter number is equal to 222. So these numbers are called amicable. Chapter 16, on the duplication of numbers. Know, O brother, that one of the special properties of numbers is that they increase by duplication and by addition, without limit. This happens in 5 ways. First, in their natural order, 1 to infinity. Secondly, in the order of even numbers. Then in the order of odd numbers. Fourthly, in terms of subtraction, and following preceding methods of calculation. Fifthly, in terms of multiplications, which we will explain later. Chapter 17, on the special properties of the types of numbers. Know, O brother, may God aid you and us with the Spirit from him, that each type of number has many properties that have been recorded in the book of Arithmetic in detail, but we will restate some parts of its chapters. The rest of the chapter goes on to explain a bit of Euclidean and Nicomachus math. Chapter 18. Know, O brother, may God aid you and us with the Spirit from him. The meaning of multiplication is the duplication of one of the numbers by the number of units of one in the other number. This chapter goes on to explain multiplication. Chapter 19, on whole numbers. This chapter explains the idea of a whole number and how you multiply whole numbers to get whole numbers. Chapter 20, on multiplication, square roots, perfect cubes, and the terms used by the algebraists and geometers and their meanings. This chapter goes on to explain what a square root is and how you use that to create cubes, essentially, in numbers. Chapter 21, concerning rectangular numbers. This chapter goes on to explain how when a number is multiplied and it is not into a perfect cube based on the previous chapter, then it fits into the category of a rectangular number. With that being said, they go on to create what is a list of categories of these rectangular numbers, some being augmented solid numbers, and some being free solid numbers, and some being deficient solid numbers. Chapter 22, on the properties of perfect squares. They go on to explain what makes a square a perfect square. Chapter 23, the proposition from the second book of Euclid's Elements. This is a deep dive by them into Euclid's book. We're going to skip this chapter. Chapter 24, on the sciences of numbers and the soul. Know, O righteous and compassionate brother, may God aid you and us with the Spirit from him, that the philosophers have put the study of science of numbers before the study of the rest of the propedeutic sciences, because this science is potentially embedded in everyone, and humans ought to reflect on it with the reasoning powers alone, without taking example from another science. But from it one takes examples for everything else that can be known. The example that we illustrated through Indic numeral in this treatise are for the beginner students whose mental powers are rather weak. But for those who are sharp-witted, these examples are not necessary if they reflect on these matters. Know, O righteous and compassionate brother, that one of our goals in composing this epistle is what we explained in the beginning, and the other goal is to bring attention to the science of the soul, and to provoke the incitement to the knowledge of its essence. For when an understanding, intelligent person studies the science of numbers and reflects upon the quantities of its species, the division of its several branches, and the special properties of these several branches, this person knows that all of them are accidental and have their being and existence in the soul. So the soul is an essence, because accidents do not have existence other than in essence, and cannot exist through it. Chapter 25, on the goal of the sciences. Now, O brother, may God aid you and us with the Spirit from him, that the goal of the wise monotheistic philosophers in studying the propedeutic sciences and the training of their apprentices is that indeed the passage to the natural sciences. The goal of studying the natural sciences is a rise and ascent from it to the theological sciences, which are the highest goal of the philosopher and the aim to which they are ascending with true knowledge. The first step of the study of the theological sciences is a knowledge of essence of the soul and the search for its source. Where was it before fastening to the body? An inquiry into its return to the source, where it will be after its separation from the body, which is called death. An inquiry into the manner of reward for good people, and how will it be in the world of spirits, an inquiry into the lot of evildoers, and how it will be in the afterlife. Moreover, quality that humans are recommended to acquire is a knowledge of their Lord, and there can be no means of knowing him except after knowing oneself. As God, the Exalted, has said, who forsakes the religion of Abraham, but he who is ignorant of himself. Meaning by it one who is ignorant of the soul, and as it is said, he who knoweth himself knoweth God. And it has been said, if he informs you of himself, he informs you of his Lord. Every scholar is bound to study the science of the soul and to get to know its essence and cultivation. God, exalted may he be, as said, and by the soul, and he who fashioned it, and who taught it its sin and its piety. He who keeps it pure will be happy, and he who corrupts it will be disappointed. And God said in the story of Al-Aziz's wife, and the narrative of Joseph, peace be upon him, the soul enjoins unto evil, save that wherein my Lord had mercy. And God said, as for him who fears to stand in the presence of his Lord and forbids his soul from low desires, surely paradise will be his abode. And God said, on the day of judgment, when every soul will come pleading for itself, and God has said, O soul, that art at rest, return to your Lord completely satisfied, and be amongst my servant, and enter into my paradise. And God has said, God takes the souls at the time of their death, and as for those that not die, he takes them during their sleep. Thus, there are many verses and proofs in the Quran on the existence of the soul and on its changeable conditions, and they are decisive against anyone who denies the existence of the soul. When these philosophers who used to discuss the science of the soul before the descent of the Quran, the New Testament's Gospels, and the Torah, inquired into the science of the soul with the natural talents of their pure minds, they deduced the knowledge of its essence by the conclusion of their reasoning. They induced them to compose philosophical books that were mentioned previously in the beginning of the first epistle. But because of extensive discourse in them and their transmission from language to language, one cannot understand their meaning or know the goal of their authors. The understanding of the meaning of these books is closed to those who inspect them, and their authors' goals troubled those who examine them. We have taken the core of their meaning and the heights of their goals of their authors, and we have presented them as briefly as possible in 52 epistles, of which this is the first. Its other companions amongst the epistles follow in it fidelity, and you can find them according to the order of the numbers, if God, most exalted, wills it. Praise be to the one who grants us reason and guides us on the straight path. The first epistle, from the first part of the propedeutic mathematical sciences, which comprises 13 epistles, has been completed. Praise be to God, the Lord of the world. May God bless his apostle Muhammad the prophet and the members of his family who are righteous. May he surely grant them peace. Thus concludes the first epistles. I'll share my thoughts on it in a second. So I believe overall what the Ikhwan are trying to do are set up their students and followers to join them on a pedagogical journey of understanding oneself. And in that, they have to start with what is baseline reality. We exist in a world that is, working off of mathematics. And if you don't understand mathematics, especially at a basic level, then you can't really understand complex metaphors. And for them, again, the common person is not as educated as they are today. In fact, most human beings who are alive today, to a certain degree, may know more about the universe and sciences than an average scholar about 200 years ago. Not to say that the ancients didn't know more than us, they probably did, especially thousands and thousands of years ago when they're creating, pyramids and ancient civilizations and all that stuff, which they mention a little bit in this book as well in later epistles. But the idea is that you cannot know God unless you know yourself. And you cannot know yourself if you do not understand the world in which you live, because you are a part of that system. If I am one of the numbers between 1 and infinity, I have to understand the numbers that precede me and then go past me in my relationship to them. Am I living life as a fraction? Am I living life as a multiplication? What am I doing with my soul? And starting with math, for us, it may seem redundant, but for them, it's important because that's how the universe works, and you have to start from square one. So that's been a bit of our exploration of the first epistle. The next video will be on geometry, their second epistle. If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing and liking, leaving a comment, and helping grow the channel so more people can be exposed to the works. I appreciate you. And as always, alhamdulillah, praise be to God.